The sun was high in the sky, burning bright and hot. It was one of those summer afternoons where the air felt heavy and sticky, making it hard to breathe. The asphalt on the street shimmered in the heat, creating waves that looked like water floating just above the ground. Most people were smart enough to stay inside their houses with the air conditioning humming, or maybe they were at the pool splashing around to cool off. But for one little girl, this was the most important day of her life, and she wasn't going to waste it sitting in front of a TV. Lily sat on a small, plastic chair behind a wobbly card table. The table was covered with a red and white checkered cloth that she had borrowed from the kitchen without asking. She had smoothed out every wrinkle with her hands 3 times already. In the center of the table sat a large plastic pitcher filled with bright yellow lemonade and lots of ice cubes that were slowly melting. The condensation on the outside of the pitcher dripped down, making a small wet puddle on the cloth. Next to the pitcher was a stack of clean paper cups and a glass jar with a handwritten label taped to the front that said lemonade, 50 cents. At 9 years old, Lily took her job very seriously. This wasn't a game where she would play for 10 minutes and then run off to chase butterflies. She had a mission. She sat up straight, keeping her feet flat on the hot pavement, watching the street like a hawk. Every time a car turned onto the street, her heart would beat a little faster. She would watch the car get closer, squinting her eyes to see if the driver was looking her way. She would practice her smile, making sure it looked friendly and not too desperate. But most cars just drove right past. A blue sedan sped by, sending a hot breeze over Lily but not slowing down. A delivery truck rumbled down the road, shaking the ground, but the driver didn't even glance in her direction. A neighbor walked a dog on the other side of the street. Lily waved enthusiastically, her arm high in the air, but the neighbor was busy looking at their phone and just kept walking. Lily lowered her arm slowly and let out a long, shaky breath. She looked down at the glass jar. It was empty, except for 2 quarters she had put in there herself to make it look like people were buying things. She had hoped that seeing a little money would make others want to add to it, like some kind of magic trick. But so far, the trick wasn't working. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. Her hair was sticking to her neck, and her face felt hot. She poured a tiny bit of lemonade into a cup for herself just to wet her whistle, realizing she hadn't had a drink all morning. It was sweet and sour, and the ice had made it watery, but she didn't mind. It tasted like effort. The truth was, Lily didn't want to be out here in the heat. She wanted to be inside playing video games or reading a comic book. But the night before, she had heard her mom and dad talking in the kitchen in low voices. The kitchen lights were turned off, but the refrigerator light cast a yellow glow on their faces. Her dad was sitting at the table with his head in his hands, and her mom was rubbing his back. "We are going to be okay," her mom had said, but her voice sounded shaky, like she was trying to convince herself. "We just have to be careful with money for a while. Your dad is looking for work, and something will come up soon." Lily had stood in the dark hallway listening. She knew her dad had lost his job a few weeks ago. She knew they stopped ordering pizza on Fridays and started buying the generic cereal that didn't taste as good. She knew her parents looked tired all the time. It made her chest feel tight and heavy. She wanted to help, but she was just a kid. She couldn't get a job, she couldn't pay the electric bill. Then she had the idea. It was simple, but it was something. She could make lemonade. She could sell it. If she made enough money, maybe she could buy a carton of milk or a loaf of bread. Maybe she could buy her dad a candy bar just to see him smile again. It wasn't much, but it was all she had to give. So that morning she had woken up before the sun. She had dug into her piggy bank to get the few dollars she had saved to buy lemons and sugar. She had squeezed the lemons until her hands hurt, mixing the sticky sugar water in a big bowl. She carried the heavy table out to the driveway by herself, dragging it across the grass so it wouldn't scratch the driveway too much. She made the sign with her thickest markers, making sure to write "thank you" in big bubble letters. Now, hours later, the sun was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawns. The air was cooling down just a little bit, but Lily's hope was cooling down faster. She looked at the ice in the pitcher. Most of it was gone now. The lemonade was getting warm and diluted. If nobody came soon, she would have to drink it all herself or pour it out, and she would have wasted her piggy bank money for nothing. She picked up a marker and added a little drawing of a sun to the corner of her sign, trying to make it look more appealing. She wondered if she should move to a different street. Maybe this street was too quiet, but her mom had told her to stay in the driveway where she could see her, and Lily always listened to her mom. A few birds chirped in a tree nearby, mocking her silence. A dog barked 2 houses down. Lily kicked her feet against the legs of her chair. Clack, clack, clack. The noise was the only sound on her street. She felt a tear prick the corner of her eye, but she quickly wiped it away. Crying wasn't going to sell lemonade. Crying wouldn't help her dad. She stood up and stretched her legs. She walked to the edge of the driveway and looked left, then right. The street was empty. Just perfect manicured lawns and quiet houses. It felt like the whole world was hiding from her. Just one car, she whispered to the empty air. Just one person. She sat back down and folded her hands in her lap, trying to be patient. She thought about her dad's face. She thought about the way he ruffled her hair every morning before school. She thought about how strong he was and how he shouldn't have to worry about money. She gripped the edges of her chair until her knuckles turned white. She decided she wasn't going to move. She would sit here until the streetlights came on if she had to. She was going to make this work. Suddenly, in the distance, she saw a figure walking. It wasn't a car. It was a person walking on the sidewalk. They were still far away, but they were coming her way. Lily sat up straighter, fixing her shirt and smoothing her hair. She grabbed the pitcher and gave it a little swirl to mix up the sugar that had settled at the bottom. Her heart began to thump against her ribs. Please stop, she thought. Please, please stop. She watched the figure get closer. It was a man walking with a steady pace. He had a jacket on even though it was hot, and he wore a baseball cap pulled down low over his eyes. He didn't look like he was in a hurry. He looked like he was just enjoying a walk or maybe thinking about something deep. Lily took a deep breath. She put on her best smile. This was it. This was her chance. She didn't know who he was or if he was even thirsty, but she was ready. She was going to sell him a cup of lemonade if it was the last thing she did. As the figure got closer, the silence of the street seemed to get louder. Lily sat up even straighter, her hands gripping the edge of the table until her fingertips turned white. She watched the man's feet moving one in front of the other on the hot sidewalk. He wasn't walking fast like he was late for something, and he wasn't walking slowly like he was lost. He had a steady, calm rhythm. When he was about 3 houses away, he looked up. Lily held her breath. This was the moment where most people would just look down at their phone or stare straight ahead to avoid making eye contact. But he didn't. He looked right at the table. He looked at the handwritten sign. Then he looked at Lily. He didn't frown or look confused. A small smile appeared on his face, crinkling the skin around his eyes. He changed his path, stepping off the sidewalk and onto the grass of her front lawn. Lily felt a burst of excitement in her chest. He was actually coming over. He was going to stop. As he walked up the driveway, Lily got a better look at him. He was dressed in simple clothes, dark pants, a t-shirt, and a jacket that looked a little too warm for the weather. He had a scruffy beard and a baseball cap pulled down low over his forehead. He looked like a regular guy, maybe someone's dad or an uncle walking home from the store. But there was something familiar about him, something that tickled the back of Lily's mind. She felt like she had seen him before, but she couldn't place where. Maybe he lived on the next street over. Maybe he was a friend of her parents. He walked right up to the table, stopping a few feet away. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at the setup. He looked at the red cloth, the stack of cups, and the pitcher with the melting ice. Then he looked at Lily. "Hi there," he said. His voice was deep and quiet, very polite. "Hi," Lily said back. Her voice came out a little squeaky, so she cleared her throat and tried to sound professional. "Would you like some lemonade?" "I would love some," the man said. He nodded his head. "It is a hot day to be sitting out here." He took his hands out of his pockets and rested them on the edge of the table, leaning forward slightly. He didn't check his watch. He didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He was just focused on her. Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. She grabbed a paper cup with one hand and the pitcher with the other. She tried to pour slowly, like her mom had taught her, but her hands were shaking just a little bit from the excitement. The lemonade splashed a tiny bit over the side of the cup, but she caught it quickly. She filled the cup about halfway, just enough to be polite without giving away too much of the supply, and placed it on a napkin on the table. "That will be 50 cents, she said. The man picked up the cup. He took a long sip. He closed his eyes for a second as he swallowed like he was really tasting it. Lily waited anxiously. Was it too sour? Was it too watery? She had added extra sugar because she knew kids liked sweet things, but maybe adults would think it was too much. He opened his eyes and smiled again. "That is really good," he said. "You made this yourself?" "Yes," Lily said proudly. "I squeezed the lemons this morning." "Well, you did a great job," he said. "It's perfect." He took another sip, holding the cup with both hands. For a second, they just stood there in the quiet driveway. The sun was beating down on them, but the shade from the man's shadow fell over the table, giving Lily a break from the glare. She looked at his face again. He had kind eyes. There was no rush in his movements. It felt strange to have a stranger stand there and drink lemonade so peacefully, especially when she had been so worried all day. "Business going okay?" he asked her casually, looking at the empty jar. Lily looked down at the jar too. Her face felt hot, and not just from the sun. She felt a little embarrassed. "It's been a little slow," she admitted quietly. The man nodded. He didn't give her a pity look, which Lily appreciated. He just looked thoughtful. "Well, the day isn't over yet," he said. He reached into his pocket. Lily watched his hand dig around in the fabric of his jeans. She expected him to pull out a single-dollar bill or maybe a handful of change. Usually people gave $1 and told her to keep the change. She was ready for that. But when he pulled his hand out, he was holding a green bill. It wasn't a 1. It wasn't a 5. It was a $20 bill. It was crisp and clean, looking brand new. Lily's eyes went wide. She stared at the money. "Oh," she said quickly, "I don't have change for that." "I only have," her voice trailed off. She didn't have anything close to $20 in change. She felt panic rising in her throat. She didn't want to make a bad impression or mess up the sale. The man didn't seem to care about the change. He held the bill out toward her. "Don't worry about it," he said softly. "But," Lily started to protest. It didn't feel right. It was too much money for a tiny cup of lemonade. It was 40 times the price she had written on the sign. "Take it," he said with a gentle nod, pushing the bill a little closer to her. "It's worth it." Lily reached out and took the bill. It felt smooth and crinkly in her fingers. She held it for a moment, not sure what to do. It felt like winning the lottery. With this single bill, she could buy 2 loaves of bread. She could buy milk and eggs. She could maybe even get a small treat for her dad. She folded the bill carefully and placed it in the glass jar. It barely fit, going in sideways since the jar was meant for coins. She looked up to say thank you, to tell him how much this meant, but the man was already turning away. He took another sip of the lemonade and gave her a small salute with the cup. "Have a good afternoon," he said. He turned his body and started walking back down the driveway. He moved with that same steady pace, heading toward the sidewalk. Lily watched him go, her mind racing. She wanted to jump up and down. She wanted to run inside and show her mom. She had done it. She had made a sale, a big sale. But as she watched his back, something stopped her from shouting out in joy. He looked a little lonely, walking there by himself in the heat. And there was something about the way he had given the money so freely. He hadn't done it to show off. He had done it because he was kind. She looked at the $20 in the jar, then back at him. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a deep curiosity. Who was this man? Why did he give her so much? She felt like she couldn't just let him walk away without him knowing that this wasn't just play money for her. She wanted him to know that this money was going to do something important. The man reached the sidewalk and was about to turn left to continue his walk. "Wait!" Lily called out before she could stop herself. The man stopped. He paused mid-step. He didn't turn around all the way, just looked over his shoulder. His face was calm, waiting. Lily stood up from her chair. Her legs felt a little wobbly from sitting for so long. She wasn't sure what she was going to say, but she knew she had to say something. The air felt still around them. The neighbor's dog had stopped barking. It was just the two of them on the asphalt. The man turned fully toward her. He took his hands out of his pockets. He looked at her with a patient expression, like he had all the time in the world. He didn't seem annoyed that she had called him back. He just stood there holding his half-finished cup of lemonade. He tilted his head slightly. "Yes." Lily took a deep breath. She gripped the front of her shirt. She looked at the $20 in the jar, then back at his kind face. She knew she had to explain why this meant so much. She had to tell him the truth. The silence that hung between them was heavy, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It felt more like the quiet moment right before a thunderstorm breaks, where the air is full of things waiting to happen. The man stood still on the sidewalk, one hand in his pocket and the other holding the plastic cup. He didn't check his phone or look at his watch. He just looked at her, his face open and waiting. Lily took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the hot summer air. She felt her heart pounding against her ribs, hard and fast. She hadn't planned on saying anything. She was just supposed to take the money, say thank you, and watch him leave. But the $20 bill sitting in the jar felt too heavy to keep a secret. It felt like she was holding something that didn't belong to her unless she was honest about why she needed it so badly. I can't take this just like that," Lily stammered. Her voice was small, sounding a lot younger than she felt. The man tilted his head to the side. "Why not?" he asked gently. "You made the lemonade, you earned it." Lily looked down at her sneakers. They were starting to get dusty from the pavement. She kicked at a small pebble, feeling a sudden wave of shyness wash over her. It was hard to talk about. It was hard to admit that things were bad at home. Kids at school talked about new video games and trips to the water park. She didn't want to be the girl whose family didn't have enough money. "It's just that I'm not doing this for fun," Lily whispered. She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "I'm not saving up for a doll or a new bike." The man stayed quiet. He took a small step closer, closing the gap between the sidewalk and the driveway. He signaled for her to go on. He didn't look bored or impatient. He looked like he really wanted to hear what she had to say. "My dad lost his job," Lily said. The words came out fast, like ripping off a Band-Aid. "A few weeks ago. He used to work in an office, but now he stays home. He tries to smile, but I know he's sad." She paused, remembering the morning she had seen him sitting at the kitchen table with the lights off, staring at a stack of papers. She remembered the way her mom's voice sounded tight when she told her they couldn't buy the cereal with the marshmallows in it. "He looks for work every day on the computer," Lily continued, her voice getting a little stronger. "But nobody calls back, and my mom worries a lot. I hear them talking at night when they think I'm asleep. They talk about bills and electricity and groceries. They try to keep it quiet, but the walls in my house are thin." She looked at the lemonade pitcher. The ice was almost completely gone now, just a few slivers floating in the yellow liquid. "I wanted to help," she said. "I wanted to do something so they wouldn't have to worry about dinner tonight. I wanted to buy milk and maybe some bread, I thought. I thought if I sold enough lemonade, I could surprise them." Lily felt a tear slide down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away with the back of her hand, not wanting to cry in front of a stranger. So that $20, it's not just play money to me. It means my parents can eat tonight. That's why I can't just take it without telling you. The street was incredibly quiet now. A car drove by a few streets over, the sound of its engine fading in the distance. A fly buzzed around the lemonade cup, but neither of them swatted it away. The man looked at the glass jar with the crisp bill folded inside it. Then he looked back at Lily. His expression had changed. The polite smile was gone, replaced by something much softer and sadder. He didn't look at her like a little kid playing a game anymore. He looked at her like she was a person who had just shared a heavy burden. He let out a long, slow breath. "You are a very good daughter," he said quietly. "Your parents are lucky to have you." Lily shrugged, feeling her face get hot. "I just want them to be happy again." The man shifted his weight. He looked down the street, then back at her. He seemed to be thinking hard about something. He took another sip of the lemonade, finishing the cup. He crumpled it in his hand, the plastic making a crinkling noise that sounded loud in the quiet afternoon. "You know," he said, his voice low and thoughtful, "sometimes life gets hard. It happens to everyone, even dads who work hard. It isn't their fault." Lily nodded. "I know, but it feels bad." "It does," he agreed. "But you know what, you doing this. Standing out here in the heat, working hard to help them. That takes a lot of courage. Most adults wouldn't do that." He took a step closer to the table. He reached into his pocket again. Lily's eyes widened. She couldn't believe it. He had already given her so much. She watched his hand move, expecting him to maybe pull out a coin or just his keys. But when he pulled his hand out, he was holding another bill. It was another 20. "I don't have any lemons left to sell," Lily said quickly, holding up her hands. "I can't sell you another cup," the man smiled. It was a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You don't have to sell me anything. Consider this a donation to the cause." He leaned over and tucked the second bill into the jar alongside the first one. It landed right on top, making a small tent. "Now you have $40, he said. "That can buy a lot of milk and bread, maybe even some cereal with marshmallows." Lily stared at the jar. $40. It felt like a fortune. She looked up at the man, her mouth open slightly. She didn't know what to say. "Thank you didn't seem big enough." "Who are you?" she asked softly. He laughed softly, a short and humble sound. "Just a guy who was thirsty," he said. He placed the crumpled cup on the table. "You take care of yourself, okay? And take care of your parents." Lily stood frozen by the table, her hands resting on the back of her chair. She watched him turn around again. He put his hands back in his pockets and started walking down the sidewalk. This time, his walk seemed a little lighter. He didn't look back. He just kept moving forward, heading toward the end of the street. The sun was lower now, casting long, golden shadows across the lawns. The air was finally starting to cool down. But Lily didn't feel cold anymore. She felt a warm glow in her chest that had nothing to do with the weather. She looked at the jar. 2 green bills sat at the bottom. She reached in and touched them with her fingertips, making sure they were real. They were. It wasn't a dream. She had done it. She had actually helped. She carefully folded the bills and put them in her front pocket, buttoning it so they wouldn't fall out. Then she began to clean up her table. She poured the remaining warm lemonade into the grass for the ants and bugs to enjoy. She stacked the cups. She folded up the red and white cloth. As she folded the table, she thought about the man. She thought about how he stopped when nobody else did. She thought about how he listened. And she thought about how he didn't just give her money, he made her feel like her hard work mattered. She picked up the jar and the pitcher and began to walk toward her front door. Her legs were tired, and her back hurt from sitting in the plastic chair all day, but she walked tall. She couldn't wait to go inside. She couldn't wait to see her dad's face when she told him she had enough for dinner. She reached the front porch and turned to look down the street one last time. The man was gone. He had vanished around the corner, back to his own life. But the feeling he left behind stayed with her. It was the feeling that maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. She opened the front door. stepped into the cool air of her house, and got ready to change her family's night. The cool air from the house felt amazing against Lily's hot skin as she stepped through the front door. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the heavy, still quiet that hangs around when people are worried. The TV wasn't on, no music was playing. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sound of her dad typing on his laptop in the small office nook off the living room. Lily stood in the hallway for a moment, her hand pressed against the front pocket of her shorts. She could feel the crinkle of the two $20 bills against her leg. It felt like she was carrying a secret treasure. She took a deep breath and walked into the living room. Her dad was sitting at the desk, his back to her. The screen of his laptop glowed on his face, showing lines of text and emails that he had been staring at for weeks. His shoulders were hunched forward, making him look smaller than he really was. He looked tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. He was rubbing his temples with his fingers, a sign Lily knew well. It meant he had a headache. "Dad," Lily said softly. He jumped a little in his chair, spinning around. When he saw it was just her, his face softened into a tired smile. "Hey, Bug," he said, his voice rough. "You're done already." "Did you sell any lemonade?" Lily walked over to him. She didn't say a word. She just reached into her pocket and pulled out the two green bills. She smoothed them out on her palm and held them out to him. Her dad looked at her hand. Then he looked at her face, his eyes squinting in confusion. He reached out and took the money, his fingers brushing against her palm. He stared at it for a long time, flipping the bills over as if he needed to check if they were real. $40, he whispered. He looked up at her, his eyes wide. "Lily, where did you get all this? Did you find it?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "I sold it, but the guy was really nice. He gave me 20 for one cup, and then I told him about us, about you losing your job, and then he gave me another one." Her dad stared at her. The color seemed to come back into his pale face. He swallowed hard, looking down at the money in his hand, then back at his daughter. "You told him. You told a stranger about our situation. I wanted him to know why the money mattered," Lily said simply. "He was kind, Daddy. He didn't make me feel weird about it." Her dad let out a breath that sounded like a deflating balloon. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. When he pulled his hand away, his eyes were shiny. "You are amazing," he whispered. "You know that? You are absolutely amazing." Just then, her mom walked out of the kitchen. She was holding a sponge, her hands wet and soapy. She looked between the two of them, sensing a change in the room. "What's going on?" she asked. "Look," her dad said. He held up the money. "Lily made this today, selling lemonade." Her mom walked over, drying her hands on a towel. She looked at the money, then at Lily. $40. "In one day, there was a man," Lily explained again. "He bought a cup and gave me a 20. Then I told him we needed help with groceries, so he gave me another one. He said I was a good daughter." Her mom looked at her dad. The tension that had been living between them for weeks seemed to crack a little. Her mom walked over and put a hand on Lily's shoulder, squeezing it tight. "That was incredibly brave of you, sweetie. And that was a very kind man. Do you know what we can do with this?" her dad asked, his voice sounding stronger now. He stood up from his chair. "We can go to the store right now. We can buy a real dinner." The simple sentence hung in the air. A real dinner, not pasta with butter, not rice and beans. They could buy chicken or maybe even some steaks if they found them on sale. They could buy vegetables that weren't canned. "Let's go," her mom said, grabbing her purse from the counter. "I'm driving." The trip to the grocery store was different than it had been in a long time. Usually, trips to the store were stressful. Her parents would walk down the aisles with a calculator, adding up every cent and putting things back if they didn't fit the budget. They would argue quietly about which brand of cereal was cheaper. But today, the energy was light. Lily sat in the backseat, watching the trees go by, feeling like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. When they got to the store, her dad pushed the cart with a spring in his step. He didn't look at the price tags on every single item. He walked straight to the meat section. "How about we cook those burgers you kids like?" he asked, looking back at Lily. "With cheese," Lily asked. "With extra cheese," her dad said, grinning. They moved through the store like a normal family. Her mom picked up a bag of apples. Her dad grabbed a box of ice cream bars, a treat that hadn't been in their freezer for months. Lily helped pick out a fresh loaf of bread. It felt like magic. The $40 wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to fill the gap for tonight. It was enough to buy peace. As they stood in the checkout line, Lily watched her parents. They were holding hands. Her dad was whispering something to her mom that made her laugh. It was a sound Lily hadn't heard in a long time. She realized that the money wasn't the most important part. It was the fact that someone cared enough to help. It was the fact that she had done something to fix the problem, even if it was small. When they got back to the house, they worked together in the kitchen. The radio was playing a pop station. Her dad was humming along, cooking the burgers on the stove while her mom sliced the tomatoes. The smell of frying meat and onions filled the house, pushing away the stale smell of worry. They sat down at the kitchen table to eat. The plates were full. The glasses had milk in them. For a few minutes, nobody said anything. They just ate, enjoying the food. "This is the best burger I've ever had," her dad said after taking a big bite. "It's pretty good," her mom agreed. They looked at Lily. "We are so proud of you," her mom said, "not just for the money, but for working so hard, for caring about us." Lily smiled, taking a bite of her burger. It tasted delicious. "I just wanted to help," she said. "You did help," her dad said. "You really did." Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the food was put away, the house felt calm again. Her dad went back to his computer to check for emails one last time before bed. Lily walked into the office to say goodnight. He was staring at the screen, but he turned around when she walked in. "Hey, Bug, ready for bed?" "Yeah," she said. She stood in the doorway for a second. "Dad, what? Did I tell you he had a beard and a baseball cap?" Her dad nodded slowly. "You did. And he was wearing a jacket even though it was hot. And he was really nice." Her dad leaned back, looking thoughtful. "You know," he said slowly, "there was a rumor in the neighborhood a while back. Someone said that Keanu Reeves bought a house a few streets over. I didn't think much of it." Lily frowned. "Keanu Reeves, the movie guy?" "Yeah," her dad said. "I've seen pictures of him when he's out walking. He usually wears a hat and keeps to himself. He likes his privacy. He's supposed to be a really nice guy, though." Lily thought about the man. The familiar face, the kind eyes, the way he didn't want credit for helping. She suddenly realized why he looked so familiar. She had seen his face on movie covers at the store. "Do you think it was him?" Lily asked, her eyes wide. Her dad smiled and shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe it was just a guy who looked like him. Does it matter?" Lily thought about it. She thought about the $20. She thought about the way he listened to her. She thought about the dinner they just ate. "No," Lily said, smiling. "I guess it doesn't matter. He was an angel to us." "Exactly," her dad said, reaching out to high-five her. "Now get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." Lily walked to her room, her heart feeling full. As she climbed into bed, she looked out the window at the street. It was dark now. The streetlights cast yellow pools of light on the pavement. The sidewalk was empty. She whispered a quiet "thank you" into the dark, hoping the wind would carry her message to the man walking somewhere out there. She closed her eyes, feeling safe and happy, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The next morning, the sun didn't just shine through the window. It seemed to wake the house up along with Lily. Usually the mornings in their house were slow and heavy. Her dad would shuffle around in his bathrobe, drinking coffee with a grim look on his face, staring at the phone that never rang. But today the house felt different. It felt lighter. Lily walked into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She could hear the radio playing. It was an oldies station, playing a song with a catchy beat that her mom loved. The smell of bacon filled the room. Real bacon, not the fake kind that comes in a box. Her dad was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes with a spatula. He was already dressed, wearing a button-down shirt and slacks. He looked like he used to look before everything went wrong. "Good morning, sleepyhead," her dad said, turning around with a big smile. "Hungry?" Lily nodded, sitting down at the table. Her mom was already there, drinking a cup of coffee and reading the paper. She looked relaxed. "We have plenty of food," her mom said, pushing a plate of fruit toward her. "Thanks to our best saleswoman." Lily smiled, but she was watching her dad. He was humming along to the radio. He wasn't staring at his phone, he was cooking. "Do you have an interview today?" Lily asked. "I do," her dad said. He flipped a pancake high in the air and caught it perfectly. "I actually got a call late last night. A company wants to talk to me. It's not a sure thing, but it feels good to get back out there." Lily felt a warm flutter in her chest. She knew the $40 didn't get him the interview, but she liked to think it helped. It helped him feel better. It helped them eat like a family again. And when you eat well and sleep well, you do better at interviews. It was all connected. After breakfast, her dad put on his tie. He kissed her mom on the cheek and ruffled Lily's hair. "Wish me luck," he said. "You don't need luck, Dad," Lily told him. "You're going to be great." He walked out the front door with his head held high. Lily watched him go through the window. He didn't walk with his head down looking at his shoes. He walked like a man who was ready to work. Around noon, Lily decided to go outside. The day was beautiful again, with big white clouds floating in the blue sky. She walked down to the end of the driveway where she had sat yesterday. The grass was a little flattened where her table had been. It looked empty now, but in a good way. Like a mission had been accomplished. She was looking at the spot when she saw Mrs. Gable from next door walking her dog. Mrs. Gable was an older lady who knew everything that happened on the street. She waved when she saw Lily. "Well, hello there," Mrs. Gable said. "I saw you out here yesterday. You were quite the busy little bee." "Yes, ma'am," Lily said politely. "Did you sell much lemonade?" Mrs. Gable asked. "I sold some," Lily said. She didn't want to brag about the money. "You know," Mrs. Gable lowered her voice, leaning in like she was sharing a secret. "My friend told me something funny. She said she saw that famous actor walking around yesterday. You know, the one from the action movies? Keanu Reeves. Apparently he likes to take long walks in this neighborhood to stay out of the city." Lily's heart jumped. "Really?" "Yes," Mrs. Gable nodded. She said he stopped to talk to a little girl selling lemonade. Imagine that. A movie star buying lemonade on our street. She said he's supposed to be the nicest man in Hollywood. "Very humble," Lily smiled. She didn't say it was her. She didn't need to. It felt nice to have a secret that was also a special memory. "That sounds like him," Lily said. "Well, have a good day, dear," Mrs. Gable said, continuing her walk. Lily stood there for a long time. She thought about the man with the beard and the baseball cap. She thought about how easy it would have been for him to ignore her. He was famous. He probably had a million things to do. People probably bother him all the time for autographs or pictures. But he had stopped, he had listened, and he had helped. She realized that he didn't give her the money because she made great lemonade. The lemonade was actually getting pretty warm and watery by the time he showed up. He gave the money because he saw her heart. He saw a kid trying to help her parents, and he wanted to be part of that solution. He didn't want credit. He didn't want a thank you card. He just wanted to make a hard day a little easier. A few days later, her dad got the job. It wasn't the same high-paying job he had before, but it was a good job with a good company. He came home that evening beaming, holding a pizza box. "We're celebrating," he announced. Life didn't magically become perfect overnight. They still had to be careful with money. They didn't go out and buy new cars or expensive toys. But the heavy cloud of worry that had been hanging over the house was gone. The scared looks on her parents' faces disappeared. They laughed more. They sat at the dinner table longer. Sometimes Lily would be walking to school or playing in the yard, and she would look down the street. hoping to see that familiar figure walking by in a jacket and a cap. She wanted to run up to him and tell him that everything worked out. She wanted to tell him that his $40 didn't just buy milk and bread, it bought hope. It bought her dad his confidence back. She never saw him again. But every time she passed a lemonade stand in her neighborhood, or saw a kid struggling with a heavy door, or someone who looked like they were having a bad day, she remembered the lesson. She learned that you don't have to be a movie star to change someone's day. You just have to pay attention. You just have to care. One afternoon, a few weeks later, Lily was riding her bike when she saw a new family moving in across the street. They looked tired and stressed. The mom was carrying a crying baby, and the dad was trying to carry 3 boxes at once. He dropped one, and papers spilled out all over the driveway. Lily stopped her bike. She watched him for a second. He looked like he was about to cry. She hopped off her bike and leaned it against a tree. She walked across the street. The man looked up, expecting her to just ride by. "Need some help?" Lily asked. The man looked surprised. "Oh, I don't want to bother you." "It's no bother," Lily said, bending down to pick up the papers. "I'm strong. I can help." As she handed him the stack of papers, she saw his shoulders relax. He let out a breath. "Thank you," he said. "Really, you have no idea how much I appreciate this." Lily smiled. She knew exactly how much he appreciated it. It was the same feeling she had when the man handed her the $20 bill. It was the feeling of not being alone in the world. "You're welcome," Lily said. "Welcome to the neighborhood." She walked back to her bike, feeling a lightness in her step that had nothing to do with the weather. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and she was ready to help. She realized that the story from the lemonade stand wasn't just about a famous guy giving money. It was about how one act of kindness can start a chain reaction. The stranger had helped her, and now she was helping someone else. And maybe that person would help someone else tomorrow. That was the real magic, and that was a story worth telling.